Sure. Here is a motivational speech in the voice and tone of Denzel Washington, centered around the theme, a woman who leaves everything in God's hands finds peace. This speech blends faith, resilience, and purpose, using powerful, grounded language reflective of Denzel's style. A woman who leaves everything in God's hands finds peace. Delivered in a calm but firm tone with pauses for impact. Let me tell you something. In this world, there's a whole lot we can't control. The job market, the economy, people's opinions, how others treat us. Life is full of unexpected storms. But I've seen something over and over again. Something strong, something unshakable. I've seen what happens when a woman stops trying to fight every battle on her own and starts trusting the one who sees the whole picture. A woman who leaves everything in God's hands, she's not weak. No, she's powerful. Because that kind of faith, that's not surrender. That's wisdom. That's a woman who knows that her strength doesn't come from controlling everything. It comes from letting go of what she can't control and putting it in the hands of the Almighty. Let me be clear. This isn't about giving up. This is about rising up. Rising above the noise, rising above the fear. Because peace, true peace, doesn't come from everything going right. It comes from knowing that no matter what goes wrong, you are not alone. The world will tell you, hustle harder, grind more, stay up late, push past your breaking point. But God says, be still and know that I am God. That's peace. Peace is not found in more money, more likes, or more followers. It's not found in having all the answers. It's found in trust. Deep, quiet, unshakable trust. I've seen women walk through fire with peace on their face. I've seen women lose everything this world says matters and still stand tall because they were anchored in something bigger. They didn't lean on their own understanding. They leaned on God. And when you do that, you stop striving. You stop panicking. You stop chasing validation and you start living. You don't have to figure it all out. You just have to believe that the one who made you has a plan for you, and it's better than anything you could imagine. Faith is not weakness, it's wisdom. In a world that often equates strength with sheer determination, force, and control, there's a deeper kind of strength. One that doesn't come from pushing harder, but from knowing when to stop and trust. We've all been conditioned to believe that we must always be in charge, that we must hold the reins of our own destiny with a tight grip. It's the message we hear constantly. If you want to succeed, if you want to make it in life, you need to hustle, to grind, to keep pushing. But what happens when all that pushing starts to feel like a never-ending struggle? What happens when the weight of trying to control every situation, every outcome becomes too much? That's when faith comes in. Faith doesn't mean you're not doing your part. It doesn't mean you sit back and wait for everything to fall into place while you do nothing. Faith is active. Faith is trusting that the journey you're on has a purpose, even when you don't understand it. It's the understanding that not everything is meant to be controlled by your willpower. It's knowing that there's a force greater than yourself guiding you, and sometimes that guidance requires patience, humility, and surrender. When we talk about faith, we often think of it in terms of religious devotion. But faith, at its core, is a belief in something beyond what we can see and touch. It's a conviction that there's more to this life than meets the eye. It's trusting that even when things don't go the way we want them to, there's a reason behind it. And this trust isn't passive. It requires strength. It requires the wisdom to step back, to recognize that you cannot control every outcome, and to have the humility to let go when necessary. In this sense, faith becomes a form of wisdom. It's the wisdom to recognize your limits and acknowledge that there are forces beyond your comprehension shaping the world around you. The world tells us that control is power, but true power comes in letting go and trusting that things will unfold as they should. That takes wisdom, the kind of wisdom that comes with understanding that there is a bigger plan in motion. It's the wisdom that teaches you that sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is release the need to control and allow things to unfold on their own. We've all seen examples of people who, despite facing immense challenges, maintain a calm and grounded demeanor. How do they do it? It's not because they don't feel the pressure or the pain. It's because they have faith in something greater than their circumstances. They know that the struggle they're going through has meaning, even if it doesn't make sense in the moment. Faith doesn't remove the struggle, but it helps you endure it with peace and perspective. It helps you understand that there's a lesson to be learned, even in the most difficult times. This kind of wisdom doesn't come easily. It's learned through experience, through trials, and through a willingness to trust even when you're unsure. There's a moment in everyone's life when they have to make a choice. Do they continue to try to control everything, or do they choose to trust that there's a plan bigger than their own? It takes wisdom to make that choice, because letting go requires strength. It requires courage to admit that you don't have all the answers, and it requires faith to trust that someone or something does. Faith allows you to see beyond the immediate. It gives you the ability to look at the bigger picture, to trust that what may seem like a setback is actually part of a larger process. It's the kind of wisdom that helps you weather life's storms without being completely consumed by them. It allows you to stay focused on the long term rather than getting lost in the short-term challenges. When you realize that faith is not weakness but wisdom, you begin to approach life with a different mindset. You start to see that the strength you need doesn't come from the ability to control everything around you, but from the ability to trust in something greater. You start to understand that faith isn't a passive act of waiting for things to happen. It's an active choice to trust, to let go, and to allow things to unfold in their own time. And when you make that choice, you'll find that peace begins to settle in. Peace comes from trust, not control. In today's world, we are conditioned to believe that in order to find peace, we need to have control over every aspect of our lives. We strive for control over our careers, our relationships, our health, and even our emotions. We chase after the belief that if we can just arrange all the pieces of our lives in the right way, then peace will follow. But the reality is that control, no matter how hard we try to hold on to it, is often an illusion. The more we try to control everything, the more we become overwhelmed, anxious, and distant from the very peace we seek. True peace doesn't come from being in control of every situation. It comes from learning to trust that there is something greater than ourselves at work. Trust is a powerful force, one that we often overlook. Trust means relinquishing the need to control and embracing the understanding that not everything is ours to manage. It's an acceptance that life, with all its ups and downs, has a purpose that sometimes transcends our limited understanding. The peace that comes from trust isn't about avoiding challenges or difficulties. It's about knowing deep down that even in the midst of life's storms, there is a sense of order and purpose that we may not always see. Trust allows us to step back, take a deep breath, and recognize that while we can't control everything, we can control how we respond to what comes our way. When we try to control, we're often fighting against forces much larger than ourselves. We try to orchestrate outcomes based on our limited perspectives, forgetting that life doesn't always unfold according to our plans. And when things don't go the way we want them to, we feel anxiety, frustration, and sometimes despair. But trust gives us the space to acknowledge that even though things aren't going as we expected, there is a bigger picture at play. Trust allows us to surrender the illusion of control and find peace in the understanding that we don't have to manage everything. We can let go, step back, and let life unfold as it's meant to. Think about the times in your life when you felt at peace. Were those the times when you had every detail perfectly arranged, when everything went according to plan? Or were those the moments when you allowed yourself to trust that things would work out, even if you didn't have all the answers? Peace doesn't come from forcing situations into the mold we want. It comes when we stop trying to force them and begin to trust that life will take care of itself, even if we don't have the entire roadmap. Trust is also about accepting uncertainty. It's easy to trust when everything is predictable and under control. But the true test of trust comes when life throws the unexpected at us. Whether it's a personal crisis, a financial setback, or an unforeseen change, the question becomes, can we trust that these challenges are part of our journey, that they are shaping us in ways we can't always see? When we let go of the need to control every detail, we give ourselves the freedom to experience life fully, without the constant burden of worry and fear. But trust isn't always easy. It's a skill we have to develop over time, through experience, and by leaning into moments of vulnerability. Trust requires letting go of the ego's need to be right, to be in charge, to have everything figured out. It requires us to be humble and open to the unknown, and that's not always comfortable. However, the beauty of trust is that it brings us peace when we need it most. It gives us the courage to face challenges without being overwhelmed by them, to keep moving forward without knowing exactly how things will turn out. When we trust, we are no longer bound by fear. Fear is what keeps us clinging to control, trying to predict every outcome and avoid every possible mistake. But when we trust, fear begins to lose its grip. Trust allows us to be present in the moment, to experience life as it comes without the constant stress of trying to control it all. And in that space of trust, peace begins to emerge. It's the peace that comes when you know without a doubt that you don't have to have all the answers right now. It's the peace that comes from accepting the flow of life and trusting that in the end, everything will work out as it should. Letting go is not giving up, it's rising above. In a world that celebrates control, achievement, and constant action, the idea of letting go often gets misunderstood. People equate letting go with failure, with giving in, with abandoning the fight. But in truth, letting go is one of the most powerful things you can do for your well-being. It's not about surrendering to defeat. It's about rising above the constant struggle and finding peace in the process. Letting go allows you to step away from the exhausting need to control everything around you and opens the door to something far more profound. The ability to trust in the flow of life and allow things to unfold as they will. There are moments in life when we're faced with situations that feel beyond our control. We may hold on to hopes, expectations, or plans, believing that if we just work a little harder, push a little more, or give a little more of ourselves, everything will turn out the way we want it to. But life doesn't always work that way. Sometimes the harder we try to control the situation, the more we push against the current, the more we feel like we're drowning. In those moments, letting go isn't about throwing in the towel or accepting defeat. It's about recognizing when it's time to release the burden and trust that the outcome is not in our hands. Letting go requires strength. It's a strength that comes from the courage to admit that we can't control everything. It's the wisdom to understand that in some situations, trying to hold on tightly only leads to greater stress and frustration. And it's the ability to rise above our ego's need to dominate every moment and allow life to unfold in its own time. Letting go is a decision, a choice we make to free ourselves from the weight of over-control and embrace a lighter, more peaceful path. It's not about abandoning your goals or aspirations. It's about realizing that there's more than one way to get to where you want to go. And that the journey doesn't have to be as hard as we sometimes make it. The act of letting go is often the beginning of growth. It's only when we release our grip on a situation that we allow ourselves to grow beyond it. Holding on to what no longer serves us, whether it's old grudges, outdated expectations, or the need for perfection, prevents us from stepping into new possibilities. By letting go, we make room for new experiences, new insights, and new opportunity. It's like cleaning out a cluttered room. When we get rid of the things that no longer bring us value, we make space for something better. But it takes courage to let go of the familiar, to step into the unknown, and trust that there's something waiting for us that's better than what we've left behind. Letting go is about rising above the limits of our current understanding and stepping into a higher level of awareness. Letting go doesn't mean that we stop caring or that we become passive about the things that matter to us. It's about knowing when our efforts have reached their limit and recognizing when it's time to step back and let things unfold. Often we hold on to things out of fear that if we don't control the situation, we'll lose it or fail. But this fear only keeps us stuck in the cycle of anxiety and stress. When we let go, do we free ourselves from that fear? Letting go means stepping into the unknown with faith, knowing that the right things will come when they are meant to. It's not about resigning yourself to whatever happens. It's about trusting that life in its own way will guide you toward what is best. There's a peace that comes with letting go. It's the peace that comes from realizing that you are not solely responsible for everything that happens. You can do your best, make your plans, and take the necessary steps, but at the end of the day, there are things beyond your control. The weight of trying to manage it all is overwhelming. And in that space of overwhelm, peace cannot exist. But when you let go of the need to control the outcome, peace floods in. You begin to understand that life is not meant to be fought at every turn. It's meant to be experienced, to be lived. Letting go is the act of choosing peace over pressure, trust over tension, and surrender over struggle. In the grand scheme of things, letting go isn't a loss, it's a gain. It's the ability to rise above the small, limiting struggles of everyday life and embrace the bigger picture. It's the understanding that while we can't control everything, we can choose how we respond to what comes our way. And in that choice, we find the true freedom to live with grace, to live with peace, and to live with a deeper sense of purpose. Letting go is not giving up, it's rising above. It's stepping into a higher version of yourself, free from the constraints of over-control, and filled with the peace that comes from knowing that sometimes the best thing we can do is release and trust. God's plan is greater than your pressure. We live in a world that constantly tells us to push harder, to work longer, to do more. There's a pressure that comes with this modern hustle, the belief that success only comes when we're constantly in motion, constantly striving, constantly controlling every outcome. We measure our worth by how much we've achieved, how many boxes we've checked, how many goals we've conquered. And while there's nothing wrong with ambition, the pressure to always perform at a high level, to never take a break, to always be in control can become overwhelming. But there's a truth that's often overlooked in the midst of all this hustle. God's plan for us is far greater than any pressure we could ever place on ourselves. When we begin to understand this truth, we begin to experience a freedom that comes from releasing the weight of unrealistic expectations and trusting in the wisdom of a higher plan. The pressure we feel comes from the belief that we have to handle everything ourselves, that our success or failure is entirely in our hands. We feel that if we don't control every aspect of our lives, every move we make, every decision, then we'll fall short or fail. This creates an unbearable amount of stress. We find ourselves working harder and harder, trying to make everything perfect, constantly worried about the outcome. But when we surrender to the understanding that God has a plan for us, a plan that is far beyond what we can imagine or engineer, that pressure begins to lift. It's a divine release, a relief from the burdens of self-reliance. And it brings peace in place of anxiety. God's plan for us is not only greater than our own, but it's also more comprehensive. When we focus on our limited vision of what we think our lives should look like, we often miss the bigger picture. We become so fixated on a single goal, a single idea of success, that we overlook the broader opportunities and blessings that may be waiting for us in unexpected places. We get stuck in a narrow view, believing that we need to meet a specific milestone or check a particular box in order to be fulfilled. But God's plan doesn't work like that. His plan is expansive, filled with infinite possibilities. He sees the full arc of our lives, the connections between people, the timing of events, the lessons we need to learn, and the growth we need to experience. It's not about achieving one singular thing. It's about becoming the person we are meant to be along the way. When we understand that God's plan is greater than the pressure we place on ourselves, we can start to let go of the need to control every outcome. We begin to understand that sometimes the best thing we can do is trust in the process, even when things don't go as we expect. Life may take turns we didn't anticipate, but that doesn't mean we're off track. It simply means that God has a bigger vision for us. Maybe that setback is preparing us for something even greater. Maybe that delay is protecting us from a future mistake we can't yet see. The key is knowing that God is always working behind the scenes, orchestrating the events of our lives in ways we may never fully understand. There's peace that comes from surrendering to the belief that God's plan will unfold in its own time. We don't have to rush or force anything. We can trust that the steps we need to take will be revealed to us when the time is right. We can rest in the knowledge that we don't have to bear the weight of everything alone. We are not in this alone. We are part of a divine plan that is far greater than our individual desires and pressures. God's plan is not limited by our struggles or our timelines. It's a plan that transcends the constraints we place on ourselves and opens up a world of possibilities that we could never have imagined on our own. The pressure to achieve and succeed in a certain way often comes from the world's standards, but God's plan is not bound by those standards. He doesn't measure success the way the world does. He's not impressed by the number of hours we work or the size of our paycheck. What matters to God is our character, our heart, and the way we love others. Success in God's eyes is not about worldly achievements. It's about becoming the person He created us to be. And that's something we can't rush. It's a process that takes time, patience, and trust. The pressure to constantly achieve can blind us to the beauty of that process. When we let go of that pressure and surrender to God's plan, we can begin to live with a sense of peace that comes from knowing that we are on the path we are meant to be on, no matter where that path leads. There is tremendous freedom in trusting that God's plan for us is greater than our own. But it's also more comprehensive. When we focus on our limited vision of what we think our lives should look like, we often miss the bigger picture. We become so fixated on a single goal, a single idea of success, that we overlook the broader opportunities and blessings that may be waiting for us in unexpected places. We get stuck in a narrow view, believing that we need to meet a specific milestone or check a particular box in order to be fulfilled. But God's plan doesn't work like that. His plan is expansive, filled with infinite possibilities. He sees the full arc of our lives, the connections between people, the timing of events, the lessons we need to learn, and the growth we need to experience. It's not about achieving one singular thing. It's about becoming the person we are meant to be along the way. When we understand that God's plan is greater than the pressure we place on ourselves, we can start to let go of the need to control every outcome. We begin to understand that sometimes the best thing we can do is trust in the process, even when things don't go as we expect. Life may take turns we didn't anticipate, but that doesn't mean we're off track. It simply means that God has a bigger vision for us. Maybe that setback is preparing us for something even greater. Maybe that delay is protecting us from a future mistake we can't yet see. The key is knowing that God is always working behind the scenes, orchestrating the events of our lives in ways we may never fully understand. There's peace that comes from surrendering to the belief that God's plan will unfold in its own time. We don't have to rush or force anything. We can trust that the steps we need to take will be revealed to us when the time is right. We can rest in the knowledge that we don't have to bear the weight of everything alone. We are not in this alone. We are part of a divine plan that is far greater than our individual desires and pressures. God's plan is not limited by our struggles or our timelines. It's a plan that transcends the constraints we place on ourselves and opens up a world of possibilities that we could never have imagined on our own. The pressure to achieve and succeed in a certain way often comes from the world's standards, but God's plan is not bound by those standards. He doesn't measure success the way the world does. He's not impressed by the number of hours we work or the size of our paycheck. What matters to God is our character, our heart, and the way we love others. Success, in God's eyes, is not about worldly achievements. It's about becoming the person He created us to be. And that's something we can't rush. It's a process that takes time, patience, and trust. The pressure to constantly achieve can blind us to the beauty of that process. When we let go of that pressure and surrender to God's plan, we can begin to live with a sense of peace that comes from knowing that we are on the path we are meant to be on, no matter where that path leads. There's tremendous freedom in trusting that God's plan for us is greater than our own. It releases us from the burden of having to figure everything out, of having to be in control at all times. Instead of constantly running on the treadmill of expectation, we can step back and let God lead. This doesn't mean we stop working or striving for excellence. It means we do so with a sense of trust that no matter the outcome, we are exactly where we need to be. The pressure we feel is not the result of God's will. It's the result of trying to live up to our own expectations. When we release those expectations and align ourselves with God's purpose, we find that the pressure lifts, and in its place, peace begins to take root. Weakness in God brings strength. In a world that never seems to stop, where we're constantly bombarded with tasks, deadlines, and expectations, the idea of stillness can seem foreign, even unproductive. We're taught from an early age that in order to succeed, we must be constantly moving, always busy, always in action. But the truth is, this relentless drive often leaves us feeling drained, overwhelmed, and disconnected from our true selves. There's a deep and profound strength found in stillness, a strength that comes from resting in God's presence and allowing His peace to renew us. It's in the moments of quiet, in the times when we stop striving and simply rest in Him, that we find the strength to face the challenges ahead. Stillness is not about doing nothing. It's about embracing the moment, letting go of our worries, and trusting that God is working even when we can't see it. In our fast-paced world, it's easy to fall into the trap of believing that the more we do, the more we achieve, and the more we control, the stronger we become. We feel the pressure to keep moving, to keep producing, to keep achieving. But this constant motion often leaves us feeling empty, even though we're doing everything right by the world's standards. Stillness, on the other hand, invites us to slow down, to quiet our minds, and to rest. It's in these moments of stillness that we are able to reconnect with our true source of strength, God. When we pause and take the time to be still before Him, we allow His presence to fill us, to heal us, and to give us the energy we need to move forward. The power of stillness lies in the fact that it is not about running away from the challenges of life. It's about facing those challenges from a place of inner peace and trust. When we try to take on the world on our own, we become overwhelmed. We may feel like we're carrying the weight of the world on our shoulders, and it can feel like we're about to break. But stillness in God is different. It's not about avoiding our responsibilities or ignoring the difficult situations in our lives. It's about finding strength in His presence, knowing that He is with us every step of the way. When we allow ourselves to be still before God, we open ourselves up to His guidance, His wisdom, and His love. We stop relying on our own limited understanding and begin to trust in His perfect plan. In stillness, we are able to hear God's voice more clearly. Life can be loud and chaotic, and it's easy to get caught up in the noise. But when we take the time to be still and quiet, we create space to listen. We create space to hear God speak into our lives, to offer us the wisdom, direction, and peace we need. Stillness allows us to step away from the distractions of the world and focus on what truly matters. It's in those quiet moments that we are reminded of who we are, whose we are, and what we are called to do. Stillness is where we are restored, renewed, and given the strength to carry on. It's also in stillness that we are reminded of our dependence on God. In our busy lives, we can sometimes forget that we are not in control of everything. We may think that our success depends solely on our efforts, that we have to do it all on our own. But stillness brings us back to the reality that we need God. It's in those moments of quiet, when we lay aside our striving, that we realize we are not meant to do everything by ourselves. We were never designed to carry the weight of the world on our own. No. Stillness humbles us, reminding us that our strength doesn't come from our own power, but from God's grace and provision. It's in letting go of the need to be in control that we find true strength, because in that surrender, we tap into God's limitless power. The world may tell us that strength comes from action, from doing, from moving fast and achieving more, but true strength comes from knowing when to pause, when to rest, and when to be still. Stillness allows us to reset and realign with God's will. It's not about abandoning our responsibilities or retreating from life's challenges. Instead, it's about finding the space to recharge, to focus, and to be equipped with the strength and wisdom we need to move forward with purpose and clarity. When we practice stillness in God, we are reminded that we don't have to do everything in our own strength. In fact, trying to do so can lead to burnout and frustration. But when we rest in God's presence, we are reminded that He is the one who sustains us. We don't have to carry the weight of the world. We just need to trust in His ability to carry us. Stillness in God brings the kind of strength that comes from peace, from trust, and from the knowledge that we are not alone in our struggles. It's a strength that rises from a deep, abiding connection with our Creator, a strength that empowers us to face each day with confidence, courage, and peace. In stillness, we find strength, not the kind of strength that comes from force, but the kind that comes from surrender. And it's in that surrender that we are able to stand tall no matter what life throws our way. The peace that surpasses understanding is found in surrender. In a world that constantly demands more work, more effort, more productivity, more control, it's easy to forget that true peace isn't something we can earn by doing more or striving harder. We often associate peace with external circumstances, when everything is in order, when we have achieved our goals, when we've resolved every conflict. Then we believe we'll find peace. But the peace that God offers us doesn't depend on what's happening around us. It transcends our circumstances and is found in surrendering control to Him. This peace is not a temporary feeling that comes and goes. It is a lasting, unshakable peace that comes from trusting God even in the midst of chaos and uncertainty. Surrendering doesn't mean giving up or resigning ourselves to passivity. When we practice stillness in God, we are reminded that we don't have to do everything in our own strength. In fact, trying to do so can lead to burnout and frustration. But when we rest in God's presence, we are reminded that He is the one who sustains us. We don't have to carry the weight of the world. We just need to trust in His ability to carry us. Stillness in God brings the kind of strength that comes from peace, from trust, and from the knowledge that we are not alone in our struggles. It's a strength that rises from a deep, abiding connection with our Creator, a strength that empowers us to face each day with confidence, courage, and peace. In stillness, we find strength, not the kind of strength that comes from force, but the kind that comes from surrender. And it's in that surrender that we are able to stand tall no matter what life throws our way. The peace that surpasses understanding is found in surrender. In a world that constantly demands more work, more effort, more productivity, more control, it's easy to forget that true peace isn't something we can earn by doing more or striving harder. We often associate peace with external circumstances, when everything is in order, when we have achieved our goals, when we've resolved every conflict. Then we believe we'll find peace. But the peace that God offers us doesn't depend on what's happening around us. It transcends our circumstances and is found in surrendering control to Him. This peace is not a temporary feeling that comes and goes. It is a lasting, unshakable peace that comes from trusting God, even in the midst of chaos and uncertainty. Surrendering doesn't mean giving up or resigning ourselves to passivity. It's not about throwing our hands in the air and walking away from our responsibilities. Surrender is an act of faith. A conscious decision to release our need to control everything and trust that God has a plan for us that is greater than we can comprehend. It's about acknowledging that no matter how hard we try, we cannot control every outcome. We can work hard, make the right decisions, and do everything in our power, but there will always be elements of life that are beyond our control. And in those moments, when we feel the pressure to manage everything ourselves, surrendering is the key to finding true peace. Surrendering to God's will can feel uncomfortable because it requires us to let go of our own desires and expectations. We like to be in control. We want to dictate the terms of our lives, decide how things will unfold, and have a clear vision of the future. But the reality is that life is unpredictable, and many of the things we hope for or plan for don't always turn out the way we expect. Surrendering to God means accepting that His plans are often different from ours and that He sees a bigger picture that we can't always understand. It's in surrendering our own desires that we find the freedom to trust in His timing and His wisdom. The peace that surpasses understanding is found in the trust that God is with us, guiding us every step of the way. It's knowing that we are not alone in the struggles we face. When we surrender, we stop trying to force things to happen according to our own timelines. Instead, we trust that God is at work, even though we don't see the results immediately. The peace that comes from surrender is a peace that rests in the assurance that no matter what happens, God is in control and He is working everything out for our good. This peace doesn't mean we won't face difficulties or challenges. It means that we can face those challenges with the confidence that we are not facing them alone. Surrendering to God is not a one-time decision. It's a continual process. Every day we are faced with choices that challenge our ability to trust God completely, whether it's letting go of our anxieties, releasing our need for control, or choosing to forgive when it's hard. Surrender is an ongoing journey. It's not always easy to let go, but each time we do, we experience a deeper sense of peace. The more we surrender, the more we recognize that peace is not dependent on our circumstances. It's dependent on our relationship with God, on our willingness to trust in His plan and to let go of our own. There is a profound peace that comes from knowing that we don't have to carry the weight of the world on our shoulders. When we surrender, we are releasing the need to be in control of everything. We are letting go of the burdens that weigh us down and trusting that God will take care of them. This doesn't mean we become passive or inactive. It means that we can move forward in life with confidence, knowing that we're not carrying the load by ourselves. God's peace comes from knowing that He is in control and that no matter what happens, He is with us, guiding us and sustaining us. The peace that surpasses understanding is the peace that comes from deep trust in God's ability to lead us through life's challenges. It's not a peace that is based on the absence of problems, but on the presence of God. When we surrender to Him, we are inviting Him into every part of our lives, and in His presence, we find a peace that can't be explained or understood by the world's standards. This peace fills the gaps in our understanding and quiets the noise of our fears and doubts. It's the peace that transcends the chaos of life and anchors us in God's love and faithfulness. Surrendering to God is not about giving up. It's about giving into His will and finding rest in His presence. It's about letting go of the constant striving and finding peace in knowing that we are held in His hand. When we surrender, we are not losing control. We are gaining something far more valuable, the peace that comes from trusting in God's plan, knowing that He's always working things together for our good. The peace that surpasses understanding is not just a feeling, it's a state of being, a deep and abiding trust in God that allows us to walk through life with calm assurance no matter what challenges we face. So to every woman out there trying to hold the world together, pause, breathe, surrender, leave it in God's hands, because that's where peace begins. And peace is priceless. Thank you.